Call the Lewis Central Board meeting for April 6, 2020. Call the meeting to order. Would you please take roll?
Ms. Atkins.
Here.
Mr. Hendricks.
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Stauffer.
Here.
Mr. Wylage.
Here.
Ms. Sheffel.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the April 6, 2020 agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get that?
Yep.
Andrea? Okay. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Ms. Atkins.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Stauffer.
Yes.
Mr. Wylage.
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Okay, now we will start the budget public hearing for the 2020-2021 school year. Was that duly posted?
Yes, that was posted and published
Okay,
in the papers.
all right. If you want to go ahead.
All right. The Lewis Central's general operating fund budget is substantially influenced in terms of total budget authorization and funding components by Iowa statutes. The maximum authorized budget is the school district's maximum authorized budget for general fund expenditures, also known as the total spending authority, or TSA, and it is calculated as follows. For this year, we'll have a combined district cost of $26,758,522. Our estimated prior year, which would be FY20, the current fiscal year, unspent balance, we're projecting to be $350,000. Our instructional support will be $1,557,994. Preschool foundation aid will be $169,152, and we're estimating miscellaneous income to be $6,650,000 for a total spending authority of $35,485,668. The total spending authority limits a district on how much it can spend. Any unused TSA carries over to the next year, but anything that is over that amount would be illegal and in violation of statutory authority to spend. Unspent balance is not cash, and unspent balance would be any unused TSA. On this slide, we have the supplemental state aid history. So it goes back to FY 2007 all the way to FY 21. For this current year, the supplemental state aid is 2.3%. The state cost per pupil is $7,048, and that is an increase of $168 from last year. Combined district cost is a formula driven, so it is our weighted enrollment times the district cost per pupil, and that was the amount that was just talked about on the prior slide of $7,048. And then it is driven by the aid and levy worksheet that calculates the full formula to define the total district cost. Miscellaneous income is another factor that comes into play, and that's from federal, state, and local sources. It is not formula driven. Many of these sources, though, are categorical or restricted purpose funds. For instance, your title dollars, those are going to fall into your miscellaneous income. They vary according to sources and levels of funding. And this is pretty much everything except for state aid or property taxes. And I have some examples on the next slide. Like I said, the non-CDC general fund revenue, federal dollars such as title funds, transportation reimbursement, state grants, some of our preschool grants, interest, rental of any of our buildings, open enrollment, and tuition is another huge factor for Lewis Central. The board has the discretion over the following programs and levies. For the general fund, the board has the discretion of the at-risk and dropout prevention program, which you guys approved already this year, and the cash reserve levy for the general fund. For the special revenue funds, the board controls the 33-cent portion of the physical plant and equipment levy, also known as PEPL, and the management levy. The voters of the Lewis Central School District have control over the instructional support program, which is a general fund program. That is a 10-year vote, and that is through 2026. For special revenue funds, 50 cents of the PEPL is voted on, and that is until 2023. Any debt levies that would be outstanding, which at this time the district does not have any voted levies, and then local option sales and service tax. So this is the operating fund revenues by source. So this is for the general fund. You have our property taxes and foundation aid, which are formula driven. And then we have the instructional support, which is the board. And then the miscellaneous revenue that we discussed that comes from different sources. And then the other two board factors are the at-risk dropout prevention and the cash reserve levy, which gives us the total revenues of the $36,746,334. So as you can see in this pie chart, majority of our operating fund combined district costs, 69% of that. So that is where majority is from. Next is the miscellaneous income, which is 19%. Board controlled is 8%, and then the instructional support has 4%. So majority of our revenues are the district combined, or the combined district cost for the. The property tax levy rates are, as defined on this sheet, the general fund for the coming year would be $10.58. Management fund would be 62.8 cents. The PEPL in total would be 88 cents, and that's 33 cents of the regular and 50 cents of the voted, for a total levy rate of $12.04. And this is a decrease from the rate the prior year. The prior year total rate was $12.26. And this is a breakdown of our total levy rate. So majority of this is determined by the state. 23% of it is determined by the board, and 13% of it is from the voters. And this graph shows a history of the levy rates for the Lewis Central School District. It's a property tax levy per 1,000. So for 2021, it shows the 12.04, and pretty much we've had a steady decrease for the most part, with a few bumps in there, but it has been steadily decreasing for majority of the time. This graph shows the district valuation and kind of goes back to the last graph and kind of explaining why we've been seeing a decrease, obviously, in our levy rates. Our district valuation has been increasing every single year, except for this year, and we had a decrease. But the reason for that decrease is that we had a large area, a $45.5 million TIF come on, and that is the Council Bluffs Old Airport, the current Metro Crossing area. So this is the first time that we are seeing a decrease in our district property tax valuation. So I foresee this to continue to increase. And if we would not have had that TIF in there, obviously we would have had an increase for this year. And with that TIF, it only affects part of our levy rates, not all of them. It affects the major one, the general fund, but does not affect the PEPL fund.
And just to clarify, Andrea, then that is $1.3 billion. Is that correct?
Correct. And these are the surrounding district's tax rate, and these are for prior years. So this is for the current FY20 and prior year FY19, not the current FY21, as that information would not be available from some of the districts. So as you can see, we are one of the lowest property tax rates in the area. The only one that is lower would be Harlan. So the budget that is being approved this evening, or that we are discussing, is the authorized budget. It is not the line item budget. The line item budget is the district's plan to use anticipated revenue to set expenditure limits to maintain the district's fiscal growth. Authorized budgets establish statutory spending maximums to build capacity to spend all or most available funds without any intention to spend it all. So like you saw before, our district cost of the $35 million, the total of spending authority, we would not, when we do our line item budget, we would not plan to spend all of those dollars. So this is just the maximum amount of money that we would be able to spend in the FY21 year. Is there any questions?
Okay, board members, do you have any questions on this?
No questions.
I have a comment. Thanks for bringing that up, that Lewis Central, we managed to do a lot in this district without having a really high tax base or having that tax levy to be high. I noticed we're about $5 less per thousand than some people around us, which
Yes,
is great to see.
yes, definitely significantly lower than one of the neighboring districts. And so obviously one of the helpful things is that we don't have a debt service levy. So that is a pretty significant part of the levy.
Absolutely. Okay, so
Dave, can you show up? Dave, put up the evaluations. So the TIF caused a drop, but why did it cause a drop? Because the TIF should only capture incremental stuff. It shouldn't make our valuation go down.
So the TIF valuation is used when factoring in on the general fund levies. So it does factor on that portion of it. So there's two different valuations. There's a TIF valuation and a non-TIF valuation. And so it does affect your general fund levy for the TIF because we are not able to tax that.
And so
So
another way to say that would be that we would be at about $1.35 million if it weren't for Metro Crossing being put on TIF.
Correct.
when was Metro Crossings put on TIF?
Just this year.
So what parcels, if it went on TIF now, then that means the value was set this year. Because TIF, I thought, only captured the incremental value of any additions they've made. And I'm trying to recall any improvements made in the old airport site in the last 12 to 20 months, and I don't recall any.
So you
They
have
did?
to remember that the taxable valuations are for prior years. So this year, we're using the taxable valuations on January 1st of 2018.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to come up with something that's been built down there that would be $50 million in the last 2 years.
Andrea, could that be in the way the TIF was structured in when it implements and how it comes into play? Or would it align, as Bob's suggesting, directly with improvements that would happen at the time of those improvements? Would that TIF kick in that way? Or is
It can be set up in multiple ways, and there could have been an addition to the original TIF that was, they could have added more land to the old airport site. That would have become an amended area to be included in that TIF. Because our debt, PEPAL, and instructional support levy, those valuation was an increase of $40 million.
Yeah, I guess, Andrea, I'd appreciate you getting a copy of that TIF agreement because I'm struggling on what valuations change that would cost us that kind of potential income.
Yes, I will get a copy of that too.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the budget public hearing for the 2020-2021 year. And now we'll go on to commendations and good news.
Dave, do you have anything tonight?
I do not.
Okay, the only thing I'll mention really quick is just it's hard to be living through this time period without giving some positive comments to all involved. I think our teachers and our administrators and our parents who have become de facto teachers at home to some degree are working wonderfully with our students in the system that we, like so many other districts, put together on the fly. We, as Josh often says, we're building this airplane as we're flying it. But just it's commendable how so many folks are coming together and providing some meaningful things for our students to be doing. We are currently working through any additional possibilities through the Department of Education that we may be able to provide for a plan going forward, since the time has been extended. Our closure has been extended to April 30th. So we're on top of things. We're working through things. We'll continue to communicate with the public as I have at least once a week. And there will be a communication update sometime this week as well.
I just wanted to add that, yes, thank you to all the teachers for all that work that is coming, because of that. Also, thank you for the teacher parade that was last week. I think that was wonderful. And then finally, even with stuff shut down, I don't know if you saw in the paper, they announced the Southwest Iowa Scholarship winners. There were several LC kids on that list. So there are still things like that going on outside of school, and students are still being recognized for their hard work.
Yeah, I did not see that list, Amy, but, or sorry, Jen, thank you for bringing that up.
Sure. Dave, you're muted.
Thank you. I would point out here on this slide, this is some data from our Zoom, our Lewis Central Zoom site. And it's obvious that teachers and students are communicating with each other. Just to point out here, over 100,000 meeting minutes since the 30th of March.
Say that one more time, Dave.
Over 100,000 meeting minutes since the 30th of March. In this past week, there's been over 100,000 meeting minutes. That's a cumulative number that looks at the number of minutes that participants are involved in Zoom meetings in our Lewis Central Zoom site.
Yeah.
Truly amazing.
We know that those efforts to keep connections with students, that has really been paramount. We of course want to provide those supplemental enrichment possibilities for kids for learning, but really even more paramount to that is just keeping that connection with kids and families. And with the tools like Zoom, and specifically Zoom in this case, it allows for both. It allows for connecting around the concepts being presented in our enrichment learning opportunities, and it just allows for that face-to-face, just like we're doing here. And it's being used very, very effectively, and we're receiving just great feedback from a lot of parents and a lot of students. So we're going to continue to encourage that.
Dave, I just have one quick question on that. How are we comfortable with the security that Zoom provides? I know that there are districts that have said don't use Zoom because of some vulnerabilities that they have that allow, a lot of capturing of information and capturing of contact data.
Josh, would you like to chime in on this one?
Sure. That's a great point, Bob. And we've had our teachers and parents reach out with questions about that. Over the weekend, Zoom put in the requirement that all meetings have to have a password. They've also turned on the waiting room by default, so teachers see the name of the person that's coming in. Because we have the lewiscentral.zoom.us, it's not as likely to be found. A lot of times, the random hijackers are looking for the zoom.us link. We do have a web page that we've emailed to teachers with some other settings that we strongly encourage, like don't turn on annotations. Only hosts can share their screen. So teachers, I think, have been doing a good job of that. And we continue to adjust as Zoom adjusts.
Do we know how much of the contact is peer-to-peer in that it is teacher to teacher or student to teacher kind of connections?
While he's kind of playing around with that, Brian, Dave and I are both administrators, and we can go in and see the meeting types that people have set up. We may not understand exactly what that means.
Yeah, and I'm not asking for anecdotally, I'm assuming that most of this is teachers holding something with their classes, on some level of frequency.
If you look at that top 10 list over there, there are two administrators on there and an instructional coach, and the rest of them are classroom teachers. I know Mrs. Hughes has a meeting every day with her group, with her classes. I don't know about the other ones there. I know Mrs. Dose, who's coming in at number 10 down there. I've seen some of her videos that she's doing with kids.
Okay.
So
good.
Yeah. It's good. It is nice to see that the teachers are in that top 10 and not just the administrators. The other part of that, though, Mrs. Reynolds is on there. She has grade level meetings with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade every Monday. So not all of, she's hosting staff meetings also, but not all of hers are strictly with adults.
Good.
Okay. I also, during this time, would like to mention, we're going to be discussing board member resignation, talking about what we need to do with that. But I just want to make sure everyone on the board knows that Randy Portray is the one who resigned. There was a position open in our district, and he did submit his resignation prior to any interviews. So I just want to make sure the board members know that. And so we'll be probably hearing more on the consent agenda. So with that, any more commendation and good news? Okay, we'll go from comments and suggestions from the audience. This is the portion of our agenda that anyone can ask questions of the board or address the board.
Josh is saying that we have no public comments from our participants at this time.
Okay, we'll go on then to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Can you scroll down on that? Okay.
So we do have an updated personnel sheet in front of us. Is there any discussion?
We only have these 3 items, of which 2 are licensed and 1 is 2 licensed to employ and 1 licensed resignation.
Doreen, that was going to be my question is, and you answered it, but he resigned, you said, before the interview, but we just received that resignation. Was it Thursday or Friday? So did he interview today?
No, that was last week. It was sent out on Friday, but I received that prior to that.
Resignation was dated April 1, and the interviews were on Friday.
Yes.
The committee interviews followed up with a finalist phone interview this morning.
Is there a reason we weren't told of that resignation then on April 1?
Well, by the time I got it, it was just my fault. I didn't get it out. On the resignation, it said there was just personal reasons. I wasn't even aware of when, who was chosen for interviews. And so I got that out on Friday.
When did we know of his intent to apply? Or when was his application actually received?
The position was closed on March 9th, so the application was received before March 9th.
So if he resigned,
They hadn't decided who was going to be interviewed yet. That was just.
but he applied and didn't resign until April 1.
Correct.
That is
Okay.
correct. And the screening of the candidates and such was delayed a little bit with the closure in the district and such. But the first interviews did take place on, the committee interview took place on Friday with all candidates that were interviewed. Not all who applied were interviewed, but the candidates that were interviewed on Friday, there were 5 candidates. And the committee of 11 people included board representation by our board president, Ms. Scheffel. And then the committee recommended a finalist that came forward for another phone interview with me this morning.
So you've only spoken with Randy as,
I did not participate in the committee hearings. I'm sorry, the committee interviews. They weren't hearings, I'm sorry. But I did not participate as superintendent. We had internal candidates, we had external candidates, and we had a board member candidate. I thought it best to not be involved as superintendent on the committee level interviews. I did join in to participate in the debriefing after all of the interviews. So I didn't see any of the interviews, but I did participate in the debriefing of all the interviews afterwards. And then again, the committee collectively determined Mr. Portray as a finalist to be further interviewed by me. It was a phone interview, an hour and 15 minutes this morning. And I obviously took the committee's recommendation forward and have brought it to you.
do we have any concerns about the procedural requirements of him applying and being selected for interviews before resigning from our board?
Ms. Scheffel asked me to check with legal counsel regarding the requirements. There are no legal requirements. Technically, he was not by law required to resign the board to be an applicant. Technically, he could have stayed on the board until he received the position. I did share with Mr. Portray that legal counsel thought it was best if he would not be a board member during the interviewing of the position. So I did share that with him, and that was received by legal counsel per the request of Mrs. Scheffel.
Did the people that were interviewing know he was no longer a board member?
You mean the interview committee, Brian?
Yes.
Yes, they were informed of that. Doreen, you're gonna have to help me. Dave, you were part of that committee as well. I remember Doreen stating that. I just can't remember if that was in the debriefing or if that was in the morning prior to the interviews. Doreen, you can maybe help me with that.
Actually, I believe it was in the communication on Thursday that he had resigned. And then before we did the interviewing, it was, I made sure everyone was aware he was no longer on the board.
Yes, we met for about 30 minutes prior to any of the interviews occurring. And at that time, Doreen did make sure that everybody understood that he had resigned and was no longer a board member.
Because procedurally wise, you can understand how this could be misperceived. Since we hired the superintendent, sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. Superintendent hires the folks down the chain, how this could be perceived. So.
And that is correct. That's why we talked with legal counsel and why. There was a committee that made the recommendation. It wasn't just one person's decision. And so understand the questioning.
Of which that committee all works through the district.
Yeah, the committee was representative of colleagues and people relative to all of the areas that are encompassed by the operations, director of operations, including our 4 building principals and board representation.
Dr. Knos, did you meet with the entire committee then when the candidates were presented?
So this was all done similar to what our board meeting is done here because of COVID-19. So
Right.
I was not in on any of the interviews. I came in with the entire committee for the complete duration of the debriefing section. And just to be clear, the way that was, I did facilitate a lot of the discussion, but it was not facilitated by me in a way to suggest any specific employee. And I'm sure that Dave and Doreen would concur with that. In other words, I didn't put my voice in to say, hey, let's go with this candidate. I never did that in any way, shape, or form. I asked questions specific to all the candidates. There were questions asked of the committee to, I guess vote maybe would be the right word, but everybody would be asked to voice their opinion about specific candidates. We ask everybody to agree on a couple of front runners out of the candidates. And then what we did with the front runners is through various questions that I asked and others echoed and asked on their own, we determined which of those 2 represented a finalist to be brought forward to me.
Okay.
Thank you. That answers a lot of my questions. I guess I don't know what the word is, but I wish we would have been told as a board back on April 1st of the actual resignation to have felt better about that than just getting that news kind of at the same time as this.
And that was on me. I apologize for not getting it out sooner. But we did have the resignation prior to everything per legal counsel.
Well, and this is not the first time a board member has gone to work for the district. Shelley that does LCLC was a director before she became head of LCLC. So but that's been 20 years ago. Yeah, probably around 20 years ago.
15, because I took her spot
Okay,
in 2005.
thanks.
Sure, I'll help you out there.
I knew I kind of remembered the past some way or another, but thanks for, yeah.
Was
I'll
that
be
a
your backup.
similar type of situation then where she resigned as the interview process was happening?
Yes.
Okay.
16, 17 years ago, as best as I can recall, yes.
Thank you.
We're going
It
back
might
to
be
ancient
good for us to
history,
put something together for this to, and I recognize that this is probably the once every 20 year kind of a deal. Just so that there isn't any misinterpretation between all parties that interview. And it just solidifies a level playing field for everybody who is applying for position. It might be worthwhile for us to think about something in the future.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and, did we get a second on the motion?
And Mr. Hendricks for the motion, and I believe, was it Mr. Weilage for the second? Okay,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, vote please.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
No.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. All right, we'll go on to reports.
No reports tonight.
All right. Well, discussion items, 8.01 pandemic pay summary resolution.
So as the board knows, two things. First of all, at the last board meeting, you approved a resolution that continued paying basically our hourly employees. And now the governor has ordered schools closed through April 30th. And I think we all know there's speculation that that could even extend beyond that. So in speaking with legal counsel, the recommendation was to just do a summary of the resolution that that you had already passed. So in quotes, I'll go ahead and read it. Per the pandemic pay resolution passed by the Lewis Central Community School District Board of Directors on March 23rd, 2020, the board resolves to continue paying our general professional staff, our building support staff, and our operations support staff through the extended closures ordered by the governor or until further action by the board. So according to legal counsel, that verbiage there at the end would allow the resolution to stand. We wouldn't have to come back again if there is yet another extension, but the board can obviously intervene and change at any point in time. So that's just the summary resolution statement that applies to the resolution that you already passed. But we'd ask you to vote on that summary resolution statement, and we'll attach that to the existing resolution.
Just out of curiosity, has there been any questions or concerns about the course of action that we're taking versus maybe what some of the other districts or people are doing? I'm in 100% support of what we're doing because we're taking care of our people. I just want to make sure that nobody is misinterpreting what we're trying to accomplish.
No, it's a perfectly good question, and it's a very appropriate question, Brian. And I appreciate you bringing it up because that has been a big topic in superintendent discussions and discussions with legislators and discussion with the Department of Education for Iowa and even on a federal level discussion. And what we are doing and what all districts that I know of are continuing to do is in line with those recommendations. Of course, you know, everybody is quick to remind that we have local control on this. The board can act on this however they want. But the question really came up when the topic of furloughs were being discussed and the fact that it may be more beneficial to some employees to, if they were furloughed, to go after the unemployment route along with the stimulus checks that were coming, and that would maybe be more lucrative. That is that's a little problematic for a school district to recommend that, because first of all, we are funded by taxpayers, and there's portions of the money that comes to us that is expected to pay employees. So if we were to utilize this opportunity to say we're going to let our general fund build while we expect employees to go capture unemployment elsewhere, and on top of that, it may not be the best decision for employees because there are very specific dates associated with what the federal government has done and language also. So staying the course for a public entity seems to be, by all the conversations I've had, and we've beat this one a lot in our conversations, it seems to be the best recommended and the appropriate thing to do. We would like our funding, to stand with what the legislature and what the Department of Education have planned for us going forward in the coming year. And we don't want to give anybody the impression, again, that we are not in need of the money that they have lined out for us. And, it'd be a little, I just don't know if it'd be accurate for us to say that, if part of our budget that is usually there to pay employees is now going into a general fund while they go get their tax dollars or paid through tax dollars elsewhere, it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. What we're doing and what all districts that I know of are doing seems to be the appropriate course to take. And the other thing is, let's just be honest. We have shortages in so many of these employee groups, and we cannot afford, if we start back up on May 1, or we start back up on May 15, or we start back up in August, we cannot afford to not have these employees with us at that time. So for all those reasons, I strongly recommend that it's the right thing to do and the right course to stay.
Are there any other questions? All right, we'll go to 8.02, the board member resignation. Andrea, would you be able to talk with this, or Eric, what our procedure is going to be?
Well, before I'll turn it over to Andrea because she has some knowledge, but I do want to mention, just to be clear, especially for anybody that's listening in, I think the board understands this. There's board action isn't required for a board member to resign. Board member has that right to resign, so that's already happened. But this is to just talk about the next steps and what that means. There's some very specific things and a timeline that we have to abide to. So I'll let Andrea talk about that.
Yes, so I published the notice of the opening for the position of the board. It will be published on Wednesday in the Nonpareil. From there, there's a 14-day window for anyone to petition for us to have a special vote. Otherwise, we have 30 days from the date of the resignation of April 1st. So we have until April 30th to appoint a board member. I do have the information from I believe the last time that this possibly happened. Anna got that information for me of kind of the application type form that we had them fill out. And I can share all of that with you guys if that is the direction that you would like to go again with that.
Jennifer, weren't you one of the ones you were the last one, I think, that came onto the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was appointed. Andrea, you mentioned the Nonpareil. Is it also going to be posted on social media, or can it be?
Yes, we can post that on social media.
Perfect.
I will get that to you, Josh.
Is there any questions? Okay. And so we'll go on to 8.03, which is the superintendent review evaluation. And Dr. Knos, do you want that into closed session?
Well, let me before I answer that, Josh had just posted on a comment, and I should have thought of this when you were approving the agenda. But once again, since we're in cyber meeting space and it's new to all of us, it may be a good thing for us to do your action items, 10.01, 10.02, and then leave the superintendent review as the last thing, especially considering anybody that's online viewing the meeting publicly.
Correct. But first you have to tell us, do you want this in closed session?
Honestly, I'm indifferent about that. I have to admit that I'm not entirely clear on what the conversation is. I think it's a conversation that is supposed to happen without me, or at least maybe initially with me and then without me. I'm a very transparent person, and honestly, you know, depending on what the content of what's being discussed, then that's what makes it different for me. I would really defer to the board on whether that's appropriate for this
What
conversation.
we have done is I have received the standard evaluation from the state of Iowa for superintendents, and the board members have filled that out. And then what we normally do is if you prefer, then we go into closed session and discuss about our superintendent targets that we'd like you to look at. And then after that, then we would go to you again with the collective evaluation together on a different date and discuss then your evaluation of your job.
Okay, and when we had, the board had approved 3 goals, 3 overarching goals, 1 learning goal that I had presented to the board, I think also in closed session early in the school year. And would you like me to provide something then in writing? I wasn't sure if that's something I went before the board in closed session again and talked about those goals, or would you like me to provide a synopsis in writing and email that to all board members for that review portion? Or would you like me, again, I could come into the closed session, the first part, and I could share that tonight if you wanted. I'm indifferent, but I think if you are talking about collectively areas of improvement, so on and so forth, then the answer to your question, Dorian, would be that I would prefer that to be closed, at least initially.
And that's what we would be discussing.
Okay.
So if you want to join us at the beginning, I know last year we did have an informal evaluation. We were in closed session, spoke to you, and I shared what the board has normally done per the state evaluation that's provided, where they have up to 5 targets that we can request of the superintendent.
Sure. So why don't we do this then, staying with your practice, when we get to that point and I pull out, and I'll let you all do the close, but I will then email, I have a document that has I think it's probably good to go, but I'll read through it real quick. And I think I'll just drop that in an email to all the board members for you to have for that going forward. You may not really need it for tonight. It's just a synopsis of those things that I was focusing on and continue to focus on this year. So I'll drop that as an email to the board, and I'll go ahead and stay out of the conversation tonight.
Okay, that sounds fine. Since you have requested this to be in closed session, then we will go ahead, if it's okay with the board, to go ahead with our action items first, and then we can come back into closed session. Is that all right? Okay. All right, then I don't hear anyone objecting. So we'll go on to comments and suggestions. This is the second portion in our agenda that people can address the board. Josh, do you have anyone that might have any comments or questions?
No, I'm not Josh, but I'm reading this. I'm reading this chat reply. No.
Yeah, that was a nope. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So then we'll go on to our action items. 10.01 pandemic pay summary resolution. Can I get a motion, please?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion the board approve the summary resolution as presented for the pandemic pay.
Second.
Did you get someone for second, Andrea?
Yes, Ms. McDaniel.
Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Weiland,
Yes.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. 10.02, approval of the 2020-2021 budget and certified levies. Could I get a motion, please?
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I would maybe recommend that in Bob's motion to approve as presented, the budget, maybe also mention certifying the levies included in that.
I'd amend it to budget and certified levy.
Second on that.
So Andrea, do we need to have a motion on the amendment?
We have Mr. Hendricks made the motion on the amendment. Mr. Stoffer made a second.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Can you repeat it, please?
The motion was to approve the budget and certified levies as presented.
Oh, I'm sorry, the amendment.
Amendment added certified levies. When Bob read it the first time, Jen,
Oh,
he just said the budget as presented, and I just suggested to add the certified levies in the language.
thank you.
It's a given, but I think it's important to have it in the motion.
Okay.
Okay, so Andrea, do we need to, can we just have one motion and vote, or do we need to do a vote on the amended motion?
Nope, the motion that is on the floor is to certify or to approve the budget and the certified levies as presented.
Perfect. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Wylage,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
and Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Okay, now
And
we'll
I'm
go-
gonna just say one quick thing. The courthouse is closed, so I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to take the budget to the courthouse. So that is something that we are working through, trying to figure out how I go to the courthouse to get the budget certified. And none of them are there to answer the phones either. So the other Pot County schools and I are working through this process.
Good to know.
And Doran, could I just add real quick? I probably should have done this earlier, but I'm going to take this opportunity. I like to give credit where credit's due. I really want to commend Andrea and her work this first year as our school business official. She just does yeoman's work. She's so knowledgeable about Iowa school funding, and she's just done a great job. And for her to just bring that up to obviously is a little bit of a levity point just regarding the courts and this strange time. We have to find levity in this strange time that we're in whenever we can. But I know that she dots I's, crosses T's, and she'll see to it that it's done and done the right way. And I just think as public as this is with our 3 viewers or whoever else, it's just important to give credit where credit's due. And I really commend Andrea for the work she's doing, and the trust I have for her is very high, very, very high.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, thank you, Andrea. Yeah, this whole month has been rather weird, and just trying to stay on top of things can get kind of, you cannot be on top of things all the time sometimes with the videos and everything electronic. Okay, so our next regular board meeting would be April 20th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so now
And
we'll-
on that note, I do have a question for Daryl and Jen. You two would be the ones that would check the invoices and bills for payment for this month. Would you like us to forego that due to the situation, or would you like to find a means to do that?
Well, before you answer, I was supposed to do it the one before that, and I wasn't able to do it because of this whole thing going on too. I don't know how we deal with that.
And to be completely honest, it is just kind of a formality for the auditors. And obviously we are in a situation that is not a normal situation. So even to the extent of if it doesn't happen during this time, I do not believe that it is a huge issue. At the same time, we don't probably have quite as many bills this month to go through, but I will just wanted to leave that up to the board. Obviously, I don't need an answer this evening from you two, but however you would like to go about it as a board.
I
for
could
that
come in and do
situation.
bills, but if you really want to know, I would almost do anything to get out of them.
I would recommend that we suspend it until we're able to come to the office.
I was gonna say, I'm already going to my office, so to stop by there would not be that big a deal, but it's, I will let the school, I'll let you guys decide for us how you'd like to proceed with that if it's not an audit issue.
Okay,
I'm at the office, so, I mean,
We also have to make sure someone is there in the building to let us in.
Yeah.
So that,
and maybe we'll just kind of see how these next couple of weeks kind of progress with things, and then we can kind of make a decision from there on it.
Sounds good.
And we are pretty locked down in this district, trying to abide by. I'm trying to be consistent with, the recommendations both locally with emergency management and at the state level. Things just continue to get tighter, and as much as we are locked down, I'm probably going to lock us down even further. We're pretty slim here at the ERC. People come in sporadically and we try to spread that out, but I'm probably going to add some organization to that. So I know that I probably never have more than maybe 3-4 tops people in this building at the same time. So of course we can always be accessible. We just need to know in advance, but the doors do stay locked.
Okay. Dave, could you do me a favor and put up the consent agenda, the personnel sheet before we go into closed session? I just wanted to look at one other thing.
Yes, just give me a moment here.
Okay.
While he's doing that, to be clear, is Andrea and Dr. Knost going into the breakout room?
Andrea will, I will not.
Okay.
And while Dave's pulling that up, I'm going to step over to my desktop computer and email my goal document that I mentioned. I'm not even going to proof it. I wasn't necessarily going to do that tonight, but I think it just makes sense. So I'll just send it and just know it's an unproofed, but I think you'll get the gist of it. Okay.
okay.
I'll do that while Dave's pulling up the consent.
Thank you. Thanks. I just wanted to verify something.
Okay.
Are you
So,
ready for closed session then?
yes, we will need a motion to go into closed session per Iowa Code 21.51I. Closed session is appropriate to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and when that individual requests a closed session. And Dr. Knost has, so
Would move that go into closed session.
Second.
any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wildledge,
yes.
Ms. Atkins,
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
and Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion to go into closed session. Josh, do you need anything else?
Nope. I will send you there now.
All right.
Ooh.
You do need to move Andrea though also.
Sorry about that.
There you go. So it's just you and me now.
Okay.
And then Eric is in it for now, and then we'll be able to exit himself. Is that right?
He is not in there. It looks like he left.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We are still on the live stream, by the way.
Okay. That's fine. All right. I will, I'm going to leave this up then until they come out of closed session. Then we'll pull them all back, I assume.
Yep.
Great. Awesome.
All righty.
community and school districts in general. So
Did we need to return here? Is this so we can officially adjourn?
I think that would be right.
Is Amy, did she lose it all?
I think she's
Yeah, we
gone.
lost Amy.
She dropped all the way out.
Yep.
Okay, do we need anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
So
Second.
moved.
Did we get a second?
Third.
Second.
Third, fourth, whatever. I guess we're out, huh? All in favor, say aye
Aye.
Aye.
or drop out. Okay. See you
Thanks.
later.
See
See you
all
later.
in a week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.